Hello, I am Tom. I've been a software engineer for 11 years now, and today I just really want to share sort of my thoughts of the industry, sort of how I've progressed and how maybe you can progress as well, from being a self-taught developer or junior engineer to sort of running your own company or be a contractor or go into leadership or wherever you really want to go with that. Um, Yeah, so this video is not really pre-prepared. More so, I just have a few notes that I'm going to be going through. Just have a general chat about sort of how I've progressed and how people generally do progress in their career here, and hopefully it helps someone. Hopefully. Otherwise, it's just my ramblings. So I do apologise if some of it isn't as professional as it should be. So the first thing I guess I want to talk about is what happens when you get your first software job. So there may be a lot of people now who just came off doing these courses, or maybe they've just finished their degree in computer science, and they're worried about getting their first job. And I've been there, and many people have, many of my friends have as well. And it can be quite a scary sort of position to be in, because maybe you can program, but you don't really know how to work in a large industry, or you're a bit worried about certain technologies you maybe haven't used, and or maybe you're just a bit scared about doing an interview. Maybe you don't feel like you're good enough. So the first thing I'd say about this, if you're in this position, is just go for it. If you want to work at a large company as a junior engineer, you want to start from the bottom, you should just go for it. Most people, when they start their career like this, they can be a bit too, I want to do this all by myself, or I should be able to do everything here because this is my job and I should be able to do it. But in actuality, when you do actually take your first job, more often than not, actually what happens is you are working with a team of some developers, maybe some business side employees as well, like BAs, POs, and you're working as a team to get something done. Now, as a junior developer, the company shouldn't really be expecting you to be able to do things by yourself yet. You're there to actually learn and hopefully progress and eventually become one of those employees which are able to do a bit of everything, or able to specialize in something that the company needs. I think a lot of people, when they start their career, they're very saying, oh, I need to do this and I don't want to ask for help. But actually, the more experience you get and the more years you do put in this, you find out that you shouldn't really be doing things on your own, and you should actually be talking, communicating, asking for help where you need it. Because it's not actually about if you can just do it. It's about if you can do it and your team knows that it's being done in a certain way, and the team understands why it's being done in a certain way. So communication is a really key point when you start your career. It's not only about your development skills, it's a lot about your communication as well. Yeah, so let's say that you've landed your first job and you're really happy with it. You have a nice team, they're supporting you how they should be supporting you, and you're really getting on with everything. But you're thinking, like, now, how do I really progress from a junior developer maybe to a mid-level, or even looking towards more that senior side? Maybe even if you wanted to progress from less programming even into a technical side of the work as well. Where do you really go from there? So if you're looking at the development side, it's really important that you know your design patterns. It doesn't really matter what language you're using. It doesn't really matter what the technology stack is. You'll find out that most of these things, they become the same. The database stack, whichever you're using, in general and abstractly, they are somewhat the same. What design patterns you use as well is really important. But if you're focusing on the development side of things, you really need to look at using these standard design patterns. Start introducing yourself into solid principles, learning some fundamentals with using Linux. I'm talking terminal Linux, not like using the IDEs. If you're using Git, I'd really recommend you stop using the GUIs for Git. Start using the command line for that. because you find out you're able to work a lot faster actually once you know these things. And these visual tools, they always change, but the fundamentals they never do really. And if you're looking to get more into the business side of your career, so maybe you're thinking, well, I'm technical, but actually I want to go into more of the business communications, the delivery side, then you really need to work on your communication skills. So talking about what the product is, maybe by technical aspect, how to refine tickets and pieces of work, how to talk to developers, which if you come from a background in development, that should be a little bit easier for you maybe. Talking to the business and the product owners and the stakeholders as well. That's really important. So yeah. Yeah, and you'll get these sort of signs when you're ready to move from a junior to more mid-level, where you're able to contribute more when you're working within a team. You're understanding things a lot easier because you've maybe seen these patterns before, or you've written similar code before, so you're able to just understand them. But with pull requests as well, maybe there's less comments on them now. And pull requests are really important to get some honest feedback on that. Sometimes people feel that pull requests can be quite personal. Say if you do something one way and someone says, this is not how you do it, you should do it this way. It's always, sometimes it can feel personal, but they never are. So if you do feel like that, try to just stay calm, understand why this person is saying it this way. Should it be done that way? Can you learn from their experiences? And vice versa as well. If you really don't agree, then feel free to communicate that as well. But try to understand that these pull requests are not personal. They are there just to advance the system as we develop it as a team. It's everyone's working together at the end of the day. So yeah, getting back on to track. If you are feeling like you're ready now to go into a mid-level, you really should be knowing your solid principles really well. You should be knowing test-driven development, the reasons we do it, and you should be writing pretty decent tests. Maybe you're not 100%, and that's fine. At the end of the day, if you're going to a mid-level, you're not going to be 100% of everything yet, but you should be able to feel like you can do things maybe not fully on your own, but you're able to communicate what you're doing well. Talk about your sort of approach to what you're doing it, and communicate maybe different ways of doing it if that's preferable as well. Communication skills are also really important at this point. So if you're going into that mid position now, or that software engineer level, then I think there's a bit more expectation of you to start understanding things a bit better. Maybe not necessarily being that guy that can just hammer things out when you code it, but just to understand why things are done a certain way. Okay, so you're now a medium or software engineer, you're at mid-level, and your expectations are different now. You're paid probably a little bit higher than before. You'll maybe get larger tickets or pieces of work to complete, and you will sort of be expected to be able to program a little bit more. At the end of the day, that is your role. We are developers, so you'll be able to figure out things like connecting to databases, or how to deliver websites in specific ways, or write post certain requests through APIs, or whichever level. If you're a front end, then there'll be different expectations. At the back end, if you're full stack, it may be a bit more of a mixed bag with what you are expected to do. As a mid-level developer though, I think now is the really important time to really hammer down things like design patterns and solid principles, because your code should really start to formulate some really solid ideas now, and build some really robust systems. It won't be perfect, everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes all the time still, and that's where the communication comes in. So if you do make a mistake, or if something goes wrong, you can put your hand up and say, oh, I did that, I did it this way, you know, maybe we can figure out what went wrong and then I can change. Or where is the issue, you know? As sort of mid-level, I think it's important that you become a bit more open to making mistakes and putting your hand up and seeing how you can resolve it, and you know, being able to communicate these things a lot more as well. It's not only about programming, you know, there's communication skills, you know, drawing diagrams to communicate things is really useful. That's one of my keen things that I do now still is if I'm trying to communicate something, I may try to grab a whiteboard. Can ignore all that though. That's my bad gardening. Grab a whiteboard, or maybe throw up a diagram, or have a discussion with someone. And there'll even be maybe that part of your job which is describing something on a non-technical basis to sort of the business side and saying, we're doing this because we want to deliver these goals, for example. You'll be maybe expected to do a little bit of that. And you know, the more you do that, you start progressing more into more of a senior position where you will be communicating a lot more with the business. You'll be sort of looking over maybe a team or assisting a team a lot more. It really depends. Okay, so you're quite comfortable in your mid position now. That's pretty awesome. You feel like you're quite competent in programming now. Your communication skills maybe a little bit better, and maybe you're getting to the point where you're helping, you know, more the junior side, or you're offering your help a lot more, and that's really great if you're in that position. This is where you really want to start looking at going towards a senior position. So for me, what a senior position is that you're technically capable of dealing with most, if not all, of the tasks that you are needed to do. You're able to communicate this very well, either through, you know, updating tickets, or talking to the business side or the technical lead and whoever you are reporting to, your stakeholders, and you're able to assist and, you know, guide people as well. Yeah. Now, if you're wanting to get to that state from a mid-level developer, I think it's important that you start showing that you're willing to help people a lot more. You're willing to communicate and maybe help flesh out tickets, or like break down larger pieces of work into smaller pieces of work. That's what senior people generally are doing. They're doing a bit more, not a bit more business, but like dealing with like the business wants a large piece of work. Let's break that down into manageable chunks. Let's see what we can do within a sprint. Let's see, you know, what are we capable of doing on a technical aspect. Yeah. And when you start doing these sort of things, you will see that it's actually quite hard sometimes to break down some pieces of work. Sometimes you'll have outside dependencies that you would need to either find someone to chase up or chase up yourself. And you need to be able to make sure that these tickets are ready to go for your team or yourself or whoever you are working with. And it's important that's well communicated as well throughout the business and the technical aspect of it. So focusing on the focusing on the more technical side of what a senior is expected to do. You know, things like solid principles, maybe some more DevOps work where you're thinking about learning sort of how Kubernetes works, for example, or you have AWS certificates like Cloud Practitioner. It's a very simple one to do, very useful as well. And thinking about how things scale at a larger scale. Say if you work on e-commerce, which is what I do mostly, you may think, well, what are we going to do on Black Friday, for example, or what about Christmas? What about these events that we have? How are we going to manage our infrastructure so it scales well? Now, some companies, they will have specific areas in their company to deal with that, maybe like DevOps or infrastructure, people like that. But more than likely, as a developer, you need to be able to communicate how your system works well enough to either describe it to these sort of people who will then help you scale it, or you'll be doing it yourself. So now would be a good time to start looking at how to use these cloud services, or looking at Kubernetes or things like that to figure out how systems scale, how load balancing works, horizontal, vertical scaling, using things like Elasticsearch or these other sort of data stores. You may want to learn about sharding as well. There's a lot of different aspects of software and applications integrations that really can become part of your role as a senior. Sometimes it's very specific to your domain. Sometimes it might be a bit more wider and more general. But that is really sort of the journey that you have to go on through either the company you're with or your own personal interests to find out where you can really expand and broaden your horizons with that sort of knowledge. And the other aspect of this really is if, say, you're in that mid to maybe a slightly senior position and you're thinking, well, I love programming, but maybe I don't want to do it all the time. So maybe I want to be more the management side of things. So you may start looking at becoming a team lead or a software lead, where you're really focusing more on what the business needs and how you can break that up into small tickets that are technical and well fleshed out, well described, so your team can pick them up, resolving outside dependencies that you may not be in control of. Things like this, making sure that the tickets are well organized, so there's a steady increase in your routine on your team's sprints to make sure that they are delivering something which is usable, as well as it is still looking towards a further progression within the full scope of work. But whichever side you really want to work on, more of the technical side or the business side, both, it's really important to be able to do each of the skills required. You can pick which one you would rather focus on, and each do sort of offer their own career path. You could become principal engineer, or you could be head of engineering, or maybe a mix in between. And sometimes, especially even today, the actual title of jobs is less descriptive than they used to be. So you could be a technical lead, but you're actually doing a senior position where you're just mostly programming. You could be a senior where you're actually doing mostly sort of working with the business. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that at that level, I think you really need to be quite sound and solid in both your communication skills, your understanding of Agile and Scrum, and the best practices, lean methodologies, and so on, as well as your technical skills. You should know your design patterns really well now. You should know solid principles really well. You should be practicing them, performing them. You should be helping people out where you can. Just a different level of responsibility that you have. And both of them still bring the same sort of responsibility, where you are going to be responsible for larger things now. You are maybe more responsible for delivering a larger piece of work now. You may be more responsible for helping out a team, or making sure tickets are ready, everything's fleshed out, and a team can just do it. As more senior you become, you will take on more responsibility, and that's a good thing, because responsibility does really help push us forward as people. Okay, so you are sort of at senior level, you're a high level now, and you don't really know where to go from here. You can either go into sort of stay within companies and grow within that sort of corporate ladder, or you try to become self-employed, run your own sort of contracting business, being outside IR35. If you're in the UK, that's quite important if you're inside or outside. Or you might want to be an entrepreneur and run your own business now, because you have the know-how to build things, you have the communication skills, so why not? But for me, I went down the contracting route, a bit more entrepreneurial, I guess, which is really nice. For me, it's been worked out really well. But you should really think about pursuing at this point where you want to go in your career, because at this stage you're not really peaking, but you are at the higher level of becoming software engineer as a general basis. So I'm going to sort of stop talking about progression from there, because really at that point you can really go into what you want to. Each have their own sort of career path, so I do think if you've got to that point, you should really be able to know how to progress, and I think you will do. So talking about something different, I want to share maybe some stories from my career, which I think have helped me grow as a person, and hopefully maybe you can either relate to them or you can understand the lesson that I've learned from them, and that will help you. So the first story I want to talk about is when I was a junior developer. First time I got a job, I worked for it's like a call center software company, and I only knew some Java, and that's program in Java. I knew a small amount of JavaScript, and this is when it was pre-ES6, so it's ES5, ES4. And yeah, I wasn't really, as a overall developer, I wasn't that great. I could write applications, very small ones, but I couldn't do anything on my own. So one thing I learned from my first experience here is that I was always trying to do things and prove myself, which it's not bad to try to improve yourself, prove yourself. But I think when it is bad is when you really become egocentral about this sort of idea of proving yourself. At the end of it, like I said, and we've talked about before, is that you need to work as a team to progress. And that means if you need help, you need to ask for help. Don't worry if you're bothering people. There is a limit of how many times you can ask someone, and trust me, you're going to hit that at some point. I've definitely hit that in the past with people where I've just been annoying them. But mostly it's just about being able to communicate what problems you're going through and how you can try to solve them yourself, or take some advice and then try to solve it. So I guess my first couple of months I was very stubborn, and what I learned from that is that I just need to be more open. So if you are in that position, maybe try to consider just being a lot more open with the struggles, what you understand, what you don't understand, and take it as a learning experience, because at the junior level it is mostly about learning. It's not about how good of a programmer you are yet. It's about how can you learn, how can you communicate with the team, can you understand what you don't understand, Okay, and the second story per se it's not really a story, it's more of a word of advice I get. Whilst you're in your career, you're going to meet people that you don't like or you don't get on with, unfortunately. It may not be something that you can change, or maybe something that like you annoy them or they annoy you. It just happens. What the key thing here though is that you are able to still work with these people that do annoy you. I've worked with people in the past who I've just found to be really rude. They just wouldn't, maybe a bit too blunt, or they wouldn't communicate things effectively. When things go wrong, they'll look to point fingers instead of sort of seeing what they could have done as a person instead, or as a team. But that's going to happen. I think when these sort of things happen, to really sort of progress, it's better to sort of work together. Even if you don't get along, it's better to work together and try to aim towards the same target than to argue with other people that you don't agree with, or if they're becoming argumentative. Maybe it's best just to step away a bit, try to reach out to other people you may get on with more. Just try to avoid conflict is the main thing, because you are a team, and if you do have these internal quibbles all the time, you will start seeing the team break up, and at the end of the day that will affect your deadlines, it will affect everyone's deadlines, the whole team will be affected by this. So it's always best to try to resolve things or avoid conflict and make sure you're all heading the same direction. Now a quick story actually about that, and this was when I was a senior. There was a time where as seniors, there's a couple of us, we were picking a framework, and I was dead keen to be like, this is the framework, this is the one we should go for. And I was pushing it really hard. And I like the framework. I still think it's a great framework. But as another person who's also senior was like, no, this seems to be the better option. And I was being stubborn at the time. I was like, I don't understand. Why would you go with this framework? This other one's better. Da 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 da. And what ended up happening was we got to a point where we had to decide which one, because I was refusing to say this one's framework A is the best, this is the one we should go for. I was refusing to let that go. This other person was saying framework B is the best, we should go for. And he didn't want to let that go either, so we were like in conflict. And what I learned from this is that at the end of the day, we went with framework B, which was a really, really good idea, and I think it actually really did help the teams that we were in. But what I learned from that is that even if you feel like you're right, or even if you are right sometimes, it's just sometimes best to understand that something that works for everyone might be better than you being right, you know. And most of the time, you know, we think we're right, but when we step back, we're just right for certain points, but you know, another person's right for the other points. So maybe try to see from other people's side as well a bit more. Now, this isn't to say that you should be a bit of a pushover. Of course, you should express your opinion, but there is a time where you should just accept that maybe other things are better to do in other ways, and be on that team. Don't be like, well, I didn't pick this, I don't want to be on this team anymore. No, you are on that team, and you need to be a part of that team. Even if you don't agree with some designs, developments that you're doing, you need to make sure that you are part of that team. You are trying to, if you're a senior, you're trying to bring that and spread, you know, the agreed, could be technology or designs or architecture across the board. Especially at a high level, you really don't want to be quarrelling and in conflict in front of people. It looks bad. It looks really bad. So yeah, one more story. So this for me was when I was more of a self-employed contractor, so which is what I am now. What I've learned is that you are going to take contracts, or at least what I did in the past is I took contracts and I was like, this isn't really for me, but I need to take this contract, I need some money, and so on and so forth. And you may take it and you may find it's horrible and miserable. And this can happen. You can take a job that just isn't for you. And I think it's really important that you handle it professionally. So if you really aren't enjoying it, and I've been in this position where I've really not enjoyed what I was doing, you should resign. You shouldn't. You can try, you know, change things if you really want to, but if you're not enjoying it there, then you should really be saying, I shouldn't be here because I don't want to do this job. That's the end of the day. That's what it is. And people will get a bit like, oh, we can't resign, you can't leave us now. And that's understandable because, you know, employing someone is a very long process and it can be very expensive as well. But it's important that if you feel like that now, it may not get any better. It may get better, but you will have signs if it is something that just isn't going to get better, and you need to ask, do you really want to do this every day? It'll be bad for you, and it may be bad for the company as well if you stay, because you may be miserable, and no one really wants to work in a miserable environment. So if you do feel like you need to resign, you should resign. Don't try to put up with things for the sake of putting up with them. You know, it's not healthy for you. You have to do it every day. So be honest with yourself, I'd say. But on the flip side of that, of course, it doesn't mean when the going gets tough, you just leave. You know, if you don't like it because it's hard and it's not like just a bad culture match or anything, then you should be trying to stick it through. So you need to figure out where exactly the balance is with what you're looking for within a role and position, and be prepared to be responsible with what that role offers and if that is right for you as a person. Okay, I think that is pretty much everything that I have to say, really. I think someone's career is very personal, So, although the things I'm saying have helped me in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean it will help you. Although I do hope that some of it does. You can relate to it, and it does help you in the future or where you are today. Um, but it, take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. Things change all the time. AI is a big thing now, so software as an industry may change completely in the next 5-10 years. We're always at risk of that. So I think the most important thing is try to grow as a person in your career, and then I think you'll find that you'll be able to achieve a lot more. So yeah, I hope all the best, and I will see you whenever.